Title this World War II Part 8, the European Theater. We're where we left off, Mussolini was just captured, and then Hitler sent in and rescued him and basically made a puppet out of Mussolini, and also sent in, more importantly, sent in the Nazi troops, or the German troops, into Italy. So most of the fighting in Italy will be with German troops and not necessarily the Italian troops. The Italians actually are trying to get out of the war, and then that's why Hitler has to send them back in. So as of June of 1944, things have changed a bit. Okay, things have changed quite a bit. The Allies are now able to regularly bomb enemy cities at a high cost, but they can actually bomb those enemy cities at this point. The Allies are in Rome. Okay, it took them from July 1943 to June 44 to take Rome and liberate them from the Nazis. The Russians have advanced to Poland. They pushed the Germans back into Poland, and so for finally, the Germans are out of Russia. We also see how Russia is going to liberate these areas. Okay, now Marshal Tito, he was the leader of the Yugoslavian underground. He will emerge as the leader of Yugoslavia, but he will also be a Soviet puppet. And so we'll see how this is going to take hold in Eastern Europe. Here's a political cartoon, a Russian political cartoon, Russian tank running over. There's Göring, Hitler, Mussolini, and some other There's Hitler there. Oh, I think that's supposed to be Himmler. So you can see some of the things that are going on there. So biggest day, June 6th, 1944, that is D-Day. The D-Day invasion, the largest amphibious invasion ever. And I'll get you some other pictures here. 4,000 ships, 800 naval boats, 11,000 planes were involved. 500,000 men were ferried to the beaches of Normandy. The invasion force also included airborne parachute troops that would parachute behind enemy lines to set up some airstrips. Over 700 men were killed just in the training of this. 9,000 Allied troops were killed or wounded on this day alone. Future President Eisenhower, we call him Ike, at this point he is the Allied Supreme Commander. Here he is speaking to the troops. This was a top secret mission. It was actually supposed to happen a day or two earlier, but they couldn't because the weather was so bad, and they were so fearful that word would get out that on June 6th they said, we just got to go. We got to go now. Now, what I love about this is all the side stories. Okay, for instance, the Germans thought that we would come, this is the most obvious place, we would jump over from Dover to Calais, which is why you see all these divisions right here. That made the most sense. It's closer, it's right there. And all the things that were going on behind the scene, the deception, in which I'll show you a video clip of some of that thing, some blow-up tanks and things like that. Probably the most convincing part is that General Patton was used as a decoy during this, which really infuriated him. But he was used as a decoy during all this, and he was actually in Dover making speeches being very noticeable during that time. So they knew that he was in Dover, so that's what they thought. You know, there's no way we're going to try this crazy invasion without our best general. Okay, but that's exactly what happens. And we'll actually go to the place that they didn't think we'd go. It was too far. So that's why we chose this area. Omaha Beach, Utah Beach, Juneau Beach. There's also Gold Beach, Sword Beach, and obviously all our troops behind the lines. Like I said, the largest amphibious invasion of all time. You can see where most of the German divisions were up here. Down here, they're kind of spread out, which worked to our advantage. Also, this is kind of a rumor or a story behind it, is that Hitler was sleeping at the time and did not want to to be disturbed. And his generals were not allowed to make decisions on their own. So that played into our hands. The French underground was very helpful during this. So we can thank them for that as well. So we broke through the lines. By August, we're in Paris. Okay, Paris will finally be liberated. The famous French government, Free French government leader, Charles de Gaulle, will actually lead the troops into France. There he is. You can see the sign over here, Viva de Gaulle. There's the Arc de Triomphe. Here's some of our soldiers in front of these landmarks. Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe here. Here's a freedom fighter fighting the Germans. You know, those guys, I can't tell you enough the sacrifices that those French underground guys made. If it came out that they were part of this, that a lot of times the Nazis wouldn't just kill them, they would kill the whole town. So, great sacrifices. The Allies will also land in southern France too, so they're going to squeeze out the Germans out of that Vichy France and push them back into Germany. By October, the Allies take their first steps into Germany. And then we see the last stitch effort by the Nazis called the Battle of the Bulge. I got a map here to show you. Okay, here are the lines. We're pushing them back into Germany. Here's France, there's Belgium. And then the Germans launched this last major counterattack. And they push us back 50 miles into Belgium. And behind the lines, we have, for instance, here's Bastogne down here. A whole unit is in danger of being annihilated. In Bastogne, they're totally surrounded. There's no way out. So it basically comes down to surrender or die. And they asked this guy here, General McAuliffe, would you surrender? And his response was simply nuts. Means no way. So those troops held out until finally General Patton was able to come and help them to forge their way and fight their way out of it. And they will. Very brave fighting that went on during this time. And terrible weather. No shelter. It's in December. You can imagine the cold. So they refused to surrender. The Nazis, that was going to be their last effort. Okay, because at the same time, the Russians are moving into Germany from the east. So the Russians are taking their first step. So their counterattack actually kind of wore them out more than anything. And from now on, the Allies will be on the advance on both sides. We call it the vice. They're going to squeeze them. Think of a vice tightening. That's exactly what's going to happen. We start to see some rumblings, and here's some rumblings from the heads of the Germans government, thinking that maybe there could be some talk of a surrender of some sort, but we have already agreed on unconditional surrender. We're not going to stop until those people are captured or killed. In 1945, we'll see the Yalta Conference. This is where the big three will actually meet and discuss the end of the war. Very controversial. Okay, here are the big three: Stalin, FDR, and Churchill. Churchill looks nice and comfortable. But it was controversial because the Allies agreed not to intervene in those Balkan countries the USSR has taken over, and also give USSR, the Soviet Union, a piece of Poland and some privileges in the Far East, which was kind of a secret thing. Russia also agrees that they will enter the war with Japan, breaking their non-aggression pact with Japan that they signed at the beginning of the war. We don't want that because we see what they're doing in Eastern Europe, but we don't want them to have a piece of Japan. That's going to play into a major decision. They decide to split up Germany into 3 zones. And really on this map it says 4. Here's the Soviet area, Britain, and the United States. There's part of that Rhineland we've talked about before. That'll be France, part of France. So, the most interesting part is how we're going to handle it, and we're going to recoup these areas, but what the Soviets are basically going to set up another puppet government here. But if you look right here, this is the city of Berlin. That will also be split, and that is going to be a major point of contention later, okay? And we'll talk more about that, but that's very interesting that they also have decided to split that. They were supposed to be free elections. The Soviets agreed to having free elections in Europe, and as we're going to see, that's going to get thrown out of the window. So that's why it becomes very controversial. So basically, we're going to see communist free, okay, in Berlin, communist free. That's what it's going to boil down to. So we already start to see the Cold War inching its way into things before World War II is even over with. Now, as we are running into and liberating more and more of Germany, we run across what we have heard and heard stories of and rumors of, those concentration camps, those death camps. As Allies march through Germany, they uncover the hell which Hitler was running, including gas ovens, showers, the experiments, the genocide that was going on. For instance, and I'll show you guys my home video of this, Dachau, which is right here. Okay, that was the first concentration camp in 1933 that was open. The number of deaths vary according to who you're talking to. The mayor of Dachau will say over 20,000. Most reports put it into well over 200,000. Okay, the Americans liberated the camp in April of 1945, and they find it. And as you're going to see in the video, it's been pretty well preserved, and you can walk in there and see everything that was standing. The Holocaust itself, from 39 to 45, the Jewish population dropped from about 9.7 million to 3.5 million. So over 6 million people were murdered during this time, and that's just the Jewish population. A lot of accounts double the total number of other minorities that were killed: Catholics, special needs people, homosexuals. The systematic killing of a race would be called genocide, and that's definitely talking about the Jewish population there. The final solution, the Nazi plan to exterminate the Jewish population. And I'm going to show you this map when we watch the video of all the concentration camps. This number of 12 million people is actually still growing, because there's more and more evidence saying that there were many other camps that just weren't listed. They weren't official camps. So even as we speak here, the number is still growing today. Here's a few pictures that I could put up here. There's a train car full of the dead. Here's the prisoners. Mussolini's captured and killed by an angry mob. Here he is there. Oops, went too fast there. He is actually dragged through the streets, beaten. You can see his face is very distorted, not very pretty, and along with his mistress and some other people. So Mussolini is now dead. The anti-fascist fighters capture and kill him as he tried to escape. He was shot, beaten, and then basically strung up for a public display where people could walk across and do whatever. One woman shot him 5 times for one for each son that was killed during the war. And April 12th, FDR dies. Okay, Truman takes over. FDR died of natural causes, a cerebral hemorrhage. So now Truman is in power. April 30th, Hitler commits suicide, and the official surrender of Germany occurs, called VE Day. So Hitler is dead. The biggest party ever occurs here. And that is it for that. Stay classy, and yeah.